This time on the glorious return of the Retro Rippers series, we're talking about Gino Iannucci. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, a channel where you can learn new things about skateboarding. I talk about all kinds of different things in the skateboarding world. I answer your questions on my main series, Ask Rad Rat. I do all kinds of other stuff. I used to do a lot of skater profiles in this series called Retro Rippers, and I'm finally getting back into it. Today we're talking about Gino Iannucci, who is probably the most requested person to be on this series. Before that was Tom Penny, and I did that video. That was one of the biggest videos I've ever done on this channel, and people have been dying to see Gino. People are huge fans of this guy. There's even a Instagram account that's just tricks that Gino did, and the owner of that account actually contacted me too and asked me to do this video. So a lot of people have been dying for this one, and I didn't really get why. So when I first started skating, 2001, it took me a while, a couple years into it. I'm watching lots and lots of videos, and Yeah Right came out. Gino had a part in that, and his stuff was just kind of okay to me, and his part always seemed kind of like a skipper to me. And I just didn't get why so many people were in love with this guy's skating. And so I didn't really feel like doing it for a long time. And as I decided to do a little bit of research, read some articles, read some interviews, learn more about the guy, I started to get a much bigger appreciation for his skating. And I think my mind has changed quite a bit on Gino throughout the process of making this video and doing all the research for it. Same thing with Tom Penny, actually. I thought he was good, but I didn't really care. And now he's one of my favorite all-time skaters. So let's talk about Gino. He grew up in Long Island, and he started skateboarding around 1987. He skated around Long Island and in Brooklyn. And when he was about 16 or 17, he started trying to get sponsors. He sent out sponsor me tapes, and one of the guys he sent it to was John Lucero over at Black Label. And he liked what he saw of Gino skating, and he said, hey, I'll send you some boards and some shirts. You send me more footage of you skating those boards and wearing these shirts, and I'll keep sending you more stuff. And so that's what happened. And Gino was skating for Black Label. He got some more sponsors at the time. I think Gullwing Trucks was one with his sponsor tapes. And so that's what he was doing. And the first video that he was in 1991's Crummy promo from Black Label. And this was just kind of a low budget basic video that they put out. And you see Gino in there, and he's skating a lot of his hometown spots. There's this little bump to gap that was close by where he used to skate all the time with his friends. And one thing you'll notice that he's doing tons and tons of 360s, like everywhere. Every trick is a 360 almost, or some variation on a 360. There's a 360 and accidentally lands in a spin, which is kind of cool. But yeah, he's doing tons and tons of 360s. And one thing I thought about when I watched this is in 1991, he had been skating for like 4 years. I've been skating 18 years and I still can't do 360s. I mean, I've done where you spin like 180 and land in a pivot, but just to do a full 360, I don't think I've ever actually done one. At least rolling forward, I've done them fakey anyway. But yeah, so that's actually pretty impressive, all things considered, especially given those boards at the time. But so yeah, he was skating for Black Label, and he actually moved out to California, and he stayed with John for a while. And he was starting to get some attention with some of the stuff he was doing. So he had an ad with Black Label for a switch kickflip down the Hubba set. And he also did a switch backside flip, but this was kind of a funny story. So John Lucero, he sent out the pictures. I think he was going to go to Big Brother for them to publish, and he only put the label as backside flip. And he said that the whole team was bummed, and they came up to him like, why didn't you say that was switch? And he says, what switch? So that tells you a lot about how ahead of things Gino was. Switch was still pretty new, and even from the very beginning he was doing tons of switch stuff, which is pretty cool. And something else he did around this time was he did a backside heel flip over the Gons Gap. And this trick was a big deal. So this spot was very famous. He had just done something new on it. And even though he didn't land great, he's not sure if he should even count it because he stepped off. He would have had to step off anyway because of the ledge. But he would have stepped off even if there wasn't a ledge because the land wasn't great. But still, the sequence got published. It got a lot of attention. He was starting to get more sponsorship offers and things like that. And he eventually decided to move over to World Industries, where Natas Kalpis was running the brand 101. And he appeared in their video Snuff. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of early Switch stuff here, but I was also surprised how tech it was too. But he's got gaps, he's got a nice fakey hard flip, but just look at this tech stuff. Nollie inward heel flip to nose slide. He's got a switch tray flip Manny. He's got a switch flip nose Manny fakey flip out. And this stuff is pretty heavy tech, even for that time. Keep in mind, in the early 90s, everyone was doing crazy manual stuff, crazy flip in, flip out grinds and everything. But even for that time, he was hanging with all those guys. And it's really impressive to me because he's not known for that type of skating. Like I said, his parts when he got a little bit of a name going, when he became bigger, those parts are more simple. Lots of basic tricks, switch, pop, shove it, like simple stuff like that. But he could do the tech. He was doing the other tricks that he later settled into more was because he wanted to. He had the chops to do that crazy tech stuff, but he just did what he wanted to later. And so when he originally switched over to 101, he thought he was just a replacement because a lot of the team switched over to start Chocolate and Girl. And so he felt like they brought him in maybe just because they needed bodies to fill out their team, but he clearly had lots of skill. And so after Snuff, he was in the next video 20-shot sequence. And you can see some of his staple tricks in here. He's got switch flips, switch pop shove it. But again, I've got to point out the tech stuff. He's got a backside flip, fakey Manny, half cab flip out. That's crazy. That's some Rodney Mullen Day One song type stuff at that time. And he talked about skating here being really stressful, but he was obviously making it work. He also does a few spins into fakey manuals, which becomes a go-to thing for him a little bit later. And throughout these parts, you're starting to see that style that he becomes known for. So one thing that Giovanni Retta said about him was that he would go 3 pushes faster than anyone else would at the same spot. And as you watch the footage throughout this video, check out how far away from the landing he's actually landing. For me, if I were to skate like a grass gap, you could go there and you could tell I had skated there because you'd see like lines of dirt because I would clip the end of the gap so I could go the bare minimum speed to clear it. He'll kickflip something, he'll land 5 feet past where the gap stops, and that's just pretty impressive. And he had one more part with World, and that's Trilogy from 1996. And this is what I'm talking about with that speed and power. He is blasting all of his tricks here. And just look at that kickflip back tail. It was perfect. And those hard flips, normally I like flat ones slightly more, but I just can't deny that these look great. I saw this pro skater talking about him and saying that he can pick any tricks he wants, even uncool ones like a varial kickflip, and he can still pull them off and get away with them because he always makes them look good. And I definitely get what he's talking about here. And I also want to point out his nollie backside heels. He does a few of these and they're always really crazy. It's like he's flipping them and they're spinning faster than him, so he's got to reach behind him and try to catch up to him completely blind. It's crazy. But a little while after this came out in 1996, he decided to switch over to Chocolate. He was good friends with Keenan Milton, and this is what he said about that. Well, Keenan had just gotten on. I was still psyched on 101 till Dill and Natas left. Then I just talked to Keenan, he talked to Rick and hooked it up. That's the way it went. He was in New York when he decided to quit, and so he had to call up Rodney Mullen and quit to him over the phone, which is not the way he would have preferred to do it. But Mullen actually offered him more of a role in the company, instead of just being a skater on the team, being a pro skater, to actually be in the company. But Gino didn't want to deal with all that stuff. He just wanted to skate, and I can definitely respect that. So after he switched over to Chocolate, him and Keenan had a shared part. Gino doesn't have a ton of tricks in it because he had just filmed a part for World that same year, but he does have some pretty cool stuff in here. And funny story, Gino's not even in his first ad with Chocolate. They just put an outline of him in there. In 1997, he helped launch Action Shoes by being on their original pro team with him, Kareem Campbell, and Guy Mariano. And he actually had a pro model for them. But it's kind of interesting because he says that back in the day, you wouldn't necessarily skate your own stuff. So he wouldn't really skate his own shoes. He wasn't skating his own pro deck a lot of the times. That's just kind of how it was back then. But his pro model was pretty cool at the time. He liked it, he said. But nowadays, looking back on it, it's really thick, it's really stiff, and it's kind of hard to ride. But after that, after he was on action, he was doing more with chocolate. He ended up going on the chocolate tour in 1999, which he said was really brutal. You would skate all day, then you'd have to film skits all night.
He's going for stepping out.
Oh my God, dude.
That was the fakest slam I ever seen right there.
And the lifestyle that he was starting to lead at this point was getting to be a little bit much for him. So he's talking about how they would go out to a rave all night, get home super late. He had this story about how he, Keenan, and some other guys got home at 9 in the morning. Everyone else decided to crash. Keenan decided to make a turkey, like cook up a turkey in the morning, and then invite a bunch of people over for a Thanksgiving dinner. I don't think it was on Thanksgiving from what I gathered, but you know, everyone else has crashed and they can't handle it. But like it was just nonstop, go, go, go all the time, you know, constant drinking and all that type of stuff. And that he just felt like he was not stuck, but like sort of in this routine of doing that all the time, and it wasn't doing great for him. So in some time after Keenan passed, he decided to move back to New York. And so when he was there, he was trying to get sober. He was just kind of skating for fun, started to do some filming here and there with a friend, and he ended up being in the video Yeah Right. So we'll talk about that video, but first, there was this quote I found. It was at King's Skate Mag, and it talks about this part, and I think that this was actually a very good point. If the tricks in this part, with its abundance of shitty spots and shaky filming, were done by just about anyone else, it would be entirely forgettable and potentially unwatchable at times. Corny as it may sound, this part is a true testament to the value of style, and an illustration of how it can shine through in even the most suboptimal circumstances. And I get that. If I were to explain the part in words and just tell you what tricks he did, it wouldn't sound all that interesting. And it's the reason why I considered it a skipper back in the day. For me, I'm thinking of like Tony Hawk's score totals, and the tricks just weren't that crazy, you know, on that type of basis. But there's a lot going on in this part. So we're going to take a look at it. There are 3 different versions of this part, though, which is something I didn't know. There's the standard one, which is probably what we've all seen. There's a David Bowie version where they used a song of his instead, and that was if it was sold at a bigger store instead of like a local skate shop. Maybe it was like a licensing thing, I don't really know. And then in the special edition of the DVD, there's a 3rd edit where it's some pop song I never heard of before. I don't know if it's some kind of inside joke or something, but there are 3 different versions of the part, but let's just look at it. They all have the same tricks, at least. He starts off with his kickflip, and he's just got so much speed. He actually says that he almost ripped his pants one time when he fell and he slid down and he almost came off. Sorry, ladies, there's no actual footage of that. But he follows that up with this switch pop shove it and a 360 shove it over the grate, which I thought was pretty cool. You don't see that trick every day. It's pretty tough to control too. And then he's got this back lip. We've seen crazier tricks at this spot, very popular spot. You've seen basically everything done there. And he's got a back lip, but look at how much speed he does it with. And he slides a lot further than he has to, and he still lands with quite a bit of speed too. It's a nice one. And from there, we've got a 180 to fakie and nose manual. He's wearing a soccer jersey from an Italian team, which might be a throwback to his trip from Italy. We'll talk about that in a second. Here's a frontside nose slide. Again, simple trick, but with more speed than needed. He cleared a bunch of space on his landing here. And this 360 switch backside heel are really clean. So he's got a ton of nice 360s in this part. We're here, we got a switch flip over a fire hydrant. File that one away for a second because we're going to talk about that in a little bit. He filmed this line because he didn't have one for the part yet. The speed is pretty crazy, but just notice this 180. He said that more people were stoked on the style of that than the actual line. And just look at it. He pops it, then kind of scoops the tail around afterward. Pretty cool. Now we're getting back to the Italy trip where he does a switch pop shove it and a nollie back heel. Retta got a group of Italian Americans to go to Italy and do some skating there, and Gino killed this spot. In the epically latered video of Gino, they talk to an Italian guy, and he says like, this spot was owned by Mussolini for 60 years, and then Gino came, and now we call it Gino's Gap, or the Gino Gap, I forget which one, but that just goes to show you how crazy that was. And again, this nollie backside heel, a little bit loose, a little bit out of control, a little bit, you know, catching it blind, pretty crazy trick. He ends the part with a couple different variations of kickflip, shove it to manuals, and then a backside 360 manual in the Roslyn Banks. So this was kind of interesting because his friend who was filming, his name is Bradley Farrell, he was saying that he didn't think that trick was possible. And he was telling him as they filmed it took him 2 nights to land the trick. He was telling him like, this has never been done before. And Gino was saying, just because it's never been done doesn't make that a good enough reason to not do it. And then he did actually land it. And to be fair, I'm pretty sure I'd seen a 360 to manual before, but it was like, it was in the 90s, and I'm not going to be able to find this. I don't know where it was. And it was over like a sidewalk crack, and then landed it to manual, then dropped off of something at the end. Like, technically it had been done, but no one had done it going 80 miles an hour into a bank. So that was pretty cool. That was a nice ender. Oh yeah, and that switch flip from before. Take a look at this. Here's a sequence of it in Transworld. It's a different day, I think, because he's got a shirt on when he didn't in the video, but when he switched from Action Shoes to Nike in 2002, they actually used this sequence, and they photoshopped some Nikes on it pretty badly. I mean, just take a look at that. Technically, it's a different attempt. This one was not a land because they used a different shot where his board was more flipped, but still, it's just kind of funny of how they just photoshopped some shoes on there. Pretty crazy. But something else that you may have noticed before when you watched Yeah Right was a weird black thing on his ankle, and that was an ankle monitor. When he was asked about it, this is what he said. Yeah, I got 2 DWIs here in New York. The second one is a felony charge. I had to do some time in county jail, and when I got out, I was on house arrest. I had to wear the house arrest anklet for 60 days. They monitor where you are from the anklet. You can be out of your house only to go to work. Luckily, skating is my profession, so I could go anywhere as long as I was home by 6. Still sucked though. Next question from Krailtap, is that why you're sober now? Pretty much. I was getting a little out of hand. Then the legal trouble on top of that really interfered with my life for over 2 years. It was basically smarten up and get over it. So that's pretty rough, but it is kind of a nice break that your job technically lets you go anywhere. So he kind of got away with that to a degree. He still had to be home by 6, but just like compared to everyone else on house arrest, he could literally go anywhere he wanted and call it work. So that kind of worked out for him. But there was a lot more legal trouble that he got into, and I'll tell you about that. It really hit the fan after Yeah Right. I caught a charge that got me 1 month in county jail, and not too long after I caught another charge, which upped the time to 4 months and sent me upstate. No more county jail. With all this going on, I was out on bail all while going through the court process, and with the stress of programming and awaiting sentencing, I was completely uninterested in everything, especially skating. During Nothing But the Truth, things weren't going too good. I was living way out on Long Island with my girlfriend at the time. We both were in and out of sobriety while I was on probation after the 4-month stint, and it was a mess. No skating whatsoever. One thing led to another, and bang, another charge. Now it was really ghost, and I knew it. Once it was a fact I was headed upstate, my lawyer made it clear I'd likely do 2 years in all. But once I got sent upstate, I found out there was a shock program. It's like a Marines military boot camp style jail. You can qualify for it if it's your first time going upstate and you're there for a non-violent crime. If you qualify and take it, you're home in 6 months rather than whatever time I would have served in regular prison. I qualified and of course hopped on it. After joining, they sent me way upstate near Niagara Falls. You're in barracks with like 40 guys and they're really strict, punishing you for any little fuck up or mistake. Fucking up always meant them putting you on the ground and making you do some sort of exercise. Don't get it twisted, not to get in shape, but to get under your skin. There was one morning, some shit happened during morning physical training. We all got sent to the field, 40 of us, and had to lay on the frosty geese-shit covered field from left to right, top to bottom, and we had to roll back and forth for about a half hour. Pretty fun. I don't know exactly what type of charges we're talking about here. It was bad enough to get him potentially 2 years, although he didn't have to serve that long. But I just don't know what it is. And in all the articles and the interviews that I've been reading with him, one of the comments I would see a lot is people talking about like, this is very one-sided. This is just what he says. He actually did a lot of stuff to hurt people and like, you know, I don't know exactly what. Because like, I'm not going to say the stuff that I read because it was only rumor. I haven't seen any actual like facts about what happened. But I know he did some bad stuff. And thankfully it seems like that time that he had to serve helped him out. He talks about how having a strict daily schedule helped him actually, you know, schedule out the rest of his life after he got out and stuff like that. Seems like he's kept himself pretty clean since then. So I guess we'll just leave it at that. But after he got out, let's actually talk about the part that he mentioned in that last quote. In Brian Anderson's part, he has a couple of tricks. And I saw 2 different accounts where people talked about how at the premiere of this video, he jumps on his board and starts pushing, and people stood up and cheered, got a standing ovation just from pushing. And people love this guy's pushing, even though he doesn't seem to understand why. But again, it's tricks done very well, very clean, and a lot faster than he needs to be. And he's got a completely perfect switch inward heel flip to manual. Overall, a very nice featured spot. But what happened after he got out of jail? 2009 was pretty much just me getting my life back in order. I was in some legal trouble at the end of 2007, so I had to go away for a while. I returned home at the end of 2008 and had to start from scratch. I had to find a new place to live, and my business partner opened up Poets while I was gone, so when I returned, I jumped right into being a store owner. It was a bit foreign, even though I had a shop for a second in 2003. I hadn't skated in a long time, so I gradually got on the board whenever possible, and that was a bit tough too. So he had a shop called Poets 2 different times, first around 2003, like he mentioned, and another time from 2008 to 2012. And he closed it down because it just wasn't his passion. He didn't feel like he wanted to put 100% into running a shop. He also is talking around this time about how he's getting too old to be expected to go film video parts now. But some footage of him does start to come out. He had a few guest tricks in Pretty Sweet, and a clothing sponsor of his, Brick Harbor, they compiled those tricks, added in a few more that didn't get published, and they put together some small promo videos of his that went up online. And there's some cool stuff in here. I love the pivot kickflip out and the no comply 360. But he's the same old Gino. He's still switch mongoing. He gets a pass though, it seems, on this. But check out this line. I love this little backside pivot he does. Nobody else would do it that way, and it looks good when you do it with enough speed. And this 270 out was about as perfect as you can get. He's also got this really nice ollie 1 foot. So after he's doing this stuff, he's still skating. Things are still going well for him, but he decided to leave Chocolate in 2014 after being there for 18 years. And that was a pretty tough decision for him, but this is how he describes how it went down. When I first heard that Jason Dill and Anthony Van Engelen broke out of Alien Workshop and expanded F***ing Awesome into a board company, I was immediately super psyched. There was something about it, just a feeling I can't describe, just like the industry needed this. It was going to stir things up a little bit. The industry has been rolling the same way for a while now, and for something small to come out with these guys that are so well respected, I was just really happy for them. But it was just one day. I was filming something and we went to Supreme and Jason Dill was there. In the back of my mind, from the day that I heard about F***ing Awesome, I immediately thought I'd be down for it. It's tight, it's small, it's new, it's different. So yeah, it just got brought up while we were sitting in front of Supreme and I was like, yeah, I'm down. I knew in my heart that that's where I'd rather be, and when you feel it in your heart, it's a true gut feeling, then I had to go for it. Something else he was asked in this interview is about the name of FA, which is what I call it on YouTube so I don't get demonetized. And that's the question, like, if you make a brand with an F-bomb in it, like, what kind of effects does that have? And he talks about how some shops don't want to have a board, that says that hanging up on the wall because moms will come in and complain about it. The type of shop that's at a mall like Zoomies or something like that might not carry it. But he says that's a good thing because that means only core skaters will have access to it, like the core shops will have it and stuff like that. And to me, it just kind of seems like a bad business idea. Like, why limit the amount of people who can buy your boards? But I don't know, that's just how they decide to do it, and that's fine, whatever. But he talks about having to leave Chocolate being a very difficult thing, considering how long he had been there. Well, that was the hardest thing in the world. I don't think anyone expected me to leave. There were no signs of me being bummed out or wanting to leave. There's never been any problems or whatever. I spoke to Rick Howard, but it kind of sucked because I ended up having to speak to him over the phone because I was in Florida at the time. It was coming to the point where Jason Dill was just like, yo, have you spoken to them yet? He was giving me advice because he quit Alien and he was telling me how hard it was for them to leave and that tears were flowing. I just had to sit down, get in the car, give Rick a call, and tell him that's where my heart was at, and that's what I wanted to do, and that I don't think there's anything I could do about it. What sucked was that it happened to be the 20th anniversary of Chocolate, so it came at the worst time. There's so much stuff going on with Chocolate this year, and for me to be feeling this way at this time, it really sucked, and it was really hard for me. So Chocolate had a lot of events and 20th anniversary stuff going on this year, and he stayed on for all that. He didn't want to rain on their parade and screw them over or anything. He stayed on for that stuff, and then he left as soon as he could after that. But now that he's on a new brand, is he going to put out a new part? Is there going to be an FA video with a Gino part in it, or maybe a Nike part, something like that? He was asked that in an interview, and this is what he said. People expect a full part, and it baffles me that people still ask that when they know where a person is in their career. It's just a question that I hear, and it just puts me in a negative zone. I don't know why people expect so much. It's just that sometimes you get the feeling that you're disappointing people. When you reach 40 years old, there's only a few people out there that are still able to put out amazing video parts in their 30s, and they're special skaters, you know? It's not like just anyone can do that. Just leave that alone and let's just enjoy skating. It doesn't have to be about a 10-minute video part. Let's have fun and let the best things come out of that. So what's Gino up to right now? He actually brought back Poets again, although this time it's not as a skate shop, it's as a clothing brand. And he likes to use that name Poets because he grew up in a neighborhood called Poets Corner, where all the streets are named after poets, and it just seems like a good name to use for stuff. It is pretty cool. But Poets is not a skateboard clothing brand. It's more of a high fashion brand. And like, I don't know anything about this stuff. I don't know crap about clothing, like high end, whatever. So I'm not talking crap about it. I just don't get it. So like, it's really expensive shirts that have like pictures of scenes from movies and stuff like that on them. It's pretty cool because it's been getting tons of buzz from different, streetwear blogs and sites. And if you look up his name, most of what you'll find is stuff about this brand now and not so much about his skating, which is pretty cool. He's able to start up this new thing and it seems to be taking off. And he was asked if this is a skate brand, and he basically said, like, as a skater, part of my DNA is always going to be in it. There's always going to be an element of that, but it's not specifically a skate brand. And I get that. If you buy a white t-shirt that's $45, you're not going to want to skate in it, right? You take one slam and it's ruined. But as he gets older, his priorities change, and this is what he said. I don't know, dude, I'm a grown man now, and I like some nice clothes. It's just the natural progression of getting older. You want finer things that are made well. And you know what? I get that. As I have gotten older, I realize that you can buy underwear that doesn't come in a 12-pack for $1. You can actually buy stuff that's nice and doesn't fall apart the first time you put it through the wash. So like, I get that. I think it makes sense. But how about the rest of his life? What else does he have going on? You can actually follow him on Instagram now at Gino Iannucci Poets, which is funny because he talked about how he doesn't understand Instagram or social media and like doesn't want to be involved with it. In so many different articles I found, he was talking about that, but he's got one now. You can check him out on there. You can actually see him skate. He posts some clips from time to time. He still skates all the time. So if you want to see the newest stuff from him, that's probably where you're going to find it. Aside from that, you can catch him on the tennis court sometimes, or just out there living his life. So I found a good quote for him that I thought was a nice last word about his career, and this is what I found. I feel like respect is the most important thing in this thing that we do. I think that's the one thing that I would love to have. Just the respect in the industry that I did my thing. I did me. I just kind of stuck to who I am. I put out whatever I felt I wanted to put out. I didn't conform. You do find yourself doing that sometimes. It's kind of hard not to when you have sponsors. You find yourself doing things that you aren't necessarily extremely into. I feel that throughout my career, I've just tried to stick with my gut and what I feel that I can do to promote myself and my sponsors the best without selling my soul. So I guess I want to be remembered for being true to myself, skateboarding, and being honest. And that's all. It's as simple as that. And you know what? Throughout working on this video, I've grown to respect his skateboarding and his career a lot more than I did when I first started. I'm not going to be the kind of guy who says that his pushing is better than other skaters' tricks, which I've seen people say before and actually argue about. But I do have a lot of respect for his style, the way he skates, the stuff he chooses to do. I think that's all pretty cool. So I had a good time working on this video. Hope you enjoyed watching this. I'm going to be trying to do more Retro Rippers type stuff and bigger projects again throughout this summer. So stay tuned for that. If you don't want to miss anything, make sure you tap my logo right here on screen to subscribe. Also, YouTube is going to suggest some stuff for you to watch right there. You can also sponsor me on Patreon if you want to help support the channel. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching.